one of the greatest kings in the history of Georgia, David the Builder, during whose reign Georgia reached the greatest greatness in its existence. The Georgian king was called the greatness of the world and the state, the protector of the followers of Jesus, the conqueror of the Caesars, the defender of the glorious cross, the king of Georgia, Abkhazia, Ovshi, Alans and Russia. Now a logical question arises. What would be the foreign policy of David the Builder towards Russia in the 21st century, which at that time was one of his vassal countries? This is the question that makes the blood of the majority of Georgians run cold. Welcome, my brothers and sisters. Today I have to discuss David's foreign policy, during which the king brought Georgia out of a much worse day than it is happening in our country today, and made it the most powerful state in the world. How does the great king manage to make such political moves correctly? And personally, to my subscribers, I will ask at the end of the video. The question is, what would be the foreign policy of David the Builder towards the Russian state based on the current world order? Now, before I move on to the video, I would like to urge you to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and if you wish, you can also help the channel through a donation, the links of which are indicated in the description. And most importantly, Georgians, do not forget whose and what Gori you are from. He found himself desolated and demoralized by inheritance the state, especially against the background that in the world of that time there were much worse political problems than in today's 21st century Georgia. David's active foreign policy also included problems with relations with Byzantium, just as it is happening today with supposedly co-religionist Russia. During the 11th century, Georgia was under Byzantine influence, but after the heavy defeat at the Battle of Monoscort in August 1071, the role of the Byzantine Empire gradually declined, and to enter the Caucasus and establish its supremacy over Georgia today remained unrealized, as in relation to Georgia and other states, while the successes of the Crusaders in the Middle East contributed to the implementation of David's policy. This was a battle between the Seljuk Turks and the Byzantines. The Turks, led by Arsalani, defeated the Byzantines and captured Emperor Romanos IV. The victory of the Turks accelerated the formation of the Seljuk state in Asia Minor, and the captured Emperor Romanos IV bought his life in exchange for Byzantine lands. It is noteworthy that all the kings of 11th century Georgia bore the titles of Kuropalate, Novelissimo, Sevastos, Magistros, or Caesaros. David was the first king of the United Georgia to reject the Byzantine courtier titles. As one of the documents shows, David bore the title of Sebast even before his accession. The fact is that David, after achieving certain political and economic success, rejected the Byzantine titles. That is why, starting from the 90s of the 11th century, he is no longer mentioned in any source with the title of Byzantine courtier. This clearly indicated the fact that Georgia from now on considered itself an equal country to Byzantium, which was the fault of David's shrewd foreign policy. David, who fought from the Caucasus to Seljuk, felt well that relations with Byzantium on an equal footing were necessary. It was precisely the interests of strengthening relations with Byzantium that take the following political step: a step towards dynastic marriage, when in 1016 he sent his daughter Kata to Greece as a wife to the Greek king, or rather, as a daughter-in-law to the Greek king. David's daughter Kata married the Byzantine emperor, the well-known, you probably know, Alexius I Komnenos, the youngest son, Isaac. After such a marriage, David's historian had every right to declare that for the Georgian king, the king of the Greeks was like his own household, or rather his house. The good neighborly policy of relations with Byzantium did not change until the last years of David's reign. David did not intervene in the conflict between his son-in-law, Isaac, and the eldest son of Alexios Komnenos, John, with which the Georgian kingdom ensured the security of its southwestern borders. Here is less nepo. I want Georgia to succeed. It turns out that it was possible in the past, and the real facts of this are before us, friends. What is happening with the Crusaders now? The words of David the historian are significant. At this time, the French came out. They took Jerusalem and Antioch, and by God's grace the country of Kartli was built. David became stronger, multiplied the spans, and did not waste the tribute to his sultan, and the Turks could no longer conquer Kartli. That is, he would stop paying what people paid, the Turks could no longer Winter in Cardley, by French, David the historian refers to the European Crusaders. Such important events as the cessation of the Seljuks and the strengthening of the country with the capture of Jerusalem and Antioch connects. Well, for obvious reasons, foreign policy changes and, among them, very good political and pro-Georgian steps in the country made Georgia take its second successful political step. The appearance of the Seljuks, their success in the Middle East contributed to the implementation of David's policy. In turn, the successful struggle of the Georgian king with the Seljuks was grist for the mill of the Crusaders. That is why the newly established principalities by the Crusaders considered Georgia, which was fighting for independence, to be their friend. It is clear from the sources that David was very popular among the Crusaders as well. In the memoirs of Owain Batanishvili, there is a note that the king of Jerusalem, Baldwin II, had a certain connection with David the Builder. They even met secretly. David the Builder, and during his time, Georgia was called the defender of the Caspian Sea and the front line of the Crusaders in the fight against the Turks. Georgia was special for the Crusaders. It became a mission of importance, as you can imagine now in the 21st century for NATO and the European Union. So that the step taken by Georgia would become, for them, so to speak, an existentially important event. A political event. The relationship between Georgia and the Crusaders is most interestingly expressed by the attitude of the latter towards the Georgian monastery of the Cross in Jerusalem. After the capture of Jerusalem by the Crusaders in 1089, a large military feudal state of the Western European type was established, which, since then, the Orthodox churches located on the territory of the dependent kingdom were taken over by the Latins. But no one has touched the Georgian monastery of the Cross. This action of the Crusaders was conditioned by the military-political unity that existed between the Georgians and the Crusaders. The Crusaders apparently donated great wealth to the Georgian monasteries, which is why they are specially mentioned in the Agapes in the army of David the Builder during the Battle of Didgori. Also indicates this. Georgia's contacts with European countries. Imagine, it had such a great contribution to foreign policy throughout Europe from this small state. That imagine, in the Battle of Didgori. It's no lie that the French too, imagine in today's time, that NATO soldiers were fighting with us against the enemy. So, during David's time, Georgia had large-scale political and cultural relations with the peoples of the North Caucasus. These were Ossetians, Kivchaks, Dixini peoples, and with other peoples. For example, with the ancient Russians or Kiev. Eurasia, Armenians, Shirai, Byzantium and Jorozhny, very well-organized diplomatic relations. David the Builder's foreign policy was active and was a full demonstration of the progress, political, economic, and cultural advancement of feudal Georgia. Now, let's look at all the factors that I have listed, which were the success of the five-step Georgian foreign policy on the world stage and the formation of a single great state. Let's look at my subscribers, personally at you, at each person. The question, without any of my thoughts, in your opinion, what would David the Builder's foreign policy be in the 21st century? With the resources that David had in the 12th century, the 11th, the 12th century, and what would he do against the Russian Empire? This is a very interesting question, and I expect very adequate and very balanced answers from you. Now, what do I know? At the end of the video, you can like the video, subscribe to the channel, and in the case of Ceruli, if you wanted to continue with good projects and pro-Georgian things, by donating. That was it in this, friends. Do not forget whose and what Gori you are from. This is very important for you and your children. And now temporarily,